Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani. Welcome back to another episode of Matt Chat. I'm pleased to be joined today by, from the University of Princeton, coaching staff, the NJRTC, world traveler, and founder of the BWA, Nate Jackson. Nate, welcome back, man. Good to see you.
Hey, it's always good to see you, David. Thank you for having me on today.
You surviving the weather and Valentine's Day and all that okay?
Yeah, it's been crazy. We've gotten snow. We've gotten hit with snow. It seems like maybe 3 times the last week and a half, which is nuts. So it's been interesting kind of navigating that. Obviously, I'm a family man, and with 4 children, it's been fun to be able to play in the snow. Last year, we didn't get hardly any snow in Jersey, so it's been great. I've been running with it, but I'm looking for the sun.
Yeah, I'm actually in Las Vegas, so we got a lot of jealous people on social right now. I went out here and took a trip before I start sprinting on some of my events, and you wake up and the sunshine's coming through, so it's good for your mental health for sure.
Smart man, yeah, no, smart man. You're like, I see what's coming. Let me get out of here. That's smart man.
Exactly. So, a lot of things in your life I want to talk about, but let's start out with Princeton. Your job, your responsibilities with Princeton. Couple things there I'd like to sort of unpeel. First of all, obviously your kids didn't get to wrestle this year. That was an Ivy League decision. I think last year, obviously nobody got to wrestle at the end of the year. I think Kolodzik might have been the poster boy for literally the person that got hosed the most in the whole process. Red shirted or gray shirted, whatever the right term is, came out to help you guys, try to win an EIWA title and a trophy. Then it gets taken away. This year, you guys come out early and say no Ivy League wrestling, but you're watching 60 other schools get to wrestle. How do you keep the mentality? How do you keep the morale up? Because you got a lot of smart kids. It's harder to trick smart kids than it is to trick dumb kids.
Yeah, I would have been easy to trick. I would have been easy to trick at IU, but the kids get it. As a university, they respect the virus, and they wanted to give enough time to make a decision. I think that they've gotten, they made their decision early, and that's kind of what was given to us. I think our kids are the toughest kids in the country. I mean, they have chosen a path. I mean, Princeton is maybe the most prestigious school in the world. People are coming all over the world to get this education. They've chosen the path of, I want to crush it in the world, and I want to crush it on the mat. It sucks that that part, they're watching a lot right now, and they can't get out there. But we have some really unique individuals, and their minds are so strong. You talk about how smart they are. Well, they're smart, they're emotional, they're passionate, and they're together right now. So some kids are still working out. Under our guys, they're hitting us up and asking for pointers, and they're really staying together. They seem like they're really close, and I think we can come out of this a little bit different than everybody else. They have other teams have competition to kind of drive that hunger. So we've had to be more creative, and some of these guys have to be more creative on why they do it, why they love wrestling. But I think this is a special time where they can actually spend some time getting to know themselves as wrestlers. So much of the time coaches are putting guys through, and you get into a routine. First couple of weeks in the year, it's a lot of kids staying after for technique. And then as the year goes on, you have less kids coming in, and it's really hard to keep kids motivated. But right now, knowing that those other guys around the country are getting really quality opponents, our guys are really pushing each other really hard. So we're just, again, these kids make their culture. We can't make a culture. And this can be a really important stepping stone for them as we continue to progress as a team. And we're super excited as a coaching staff. We're like, man, we won a team trophy, and we have the guys in the room right now to go get a team trophy. So whenever we get an opportunity to showcase that, we're going to be ready.
It makes sense. Do the kids get to work out with the NJRTC? Is that legal, or how does that work?
So the kids can work out at RTC if they're not enrolled in school. Okay. It's a tricky situation. So where we are, the county actually has or the school has actually put in writing, like if you're within this county, you actually can't do X, Y, Z. So with those restrictions, kids have to be creative. The kids who live in town, or it's pretty tough. They have to stay in school and they have to honor that contract if they're enrolled. And the kids who are not, they don't have to. So just being creative right now. It's tricky situation. But once we're going full steam ahead, I think we're going to really be appreciative of it. And that's what I'm noticing most about the guys that I'm able to see. The gratefulness for each practice has really been present. And I think that's really important on making incremental gains. Like if you really want to be there and you're really happy to be there, you're going to maximize that time versus, going in there and going through the motions and really looking at the clock, trying to get out of there. So I think this is the time for guys to figure out why they love wrestling. And if you don't love wrestling, you have every excuse not to wrestle right now. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. We're going to get to that about you in a minute.
Oh my gosh. If you hated wrestling, man, hey, there were days, I'm sure you had these too when you were a kid, you would pray for, oh my gosh, can something happen in the world where we don't have to go back to, but this is not that for them. These kids are special, and it sucks for the guys who are affected, like the Colos, who are affected in those years. You can't get those years back. But it's been a lot of growth. I'm noticing out of up and down the lineup. So I'm excited.
I'm sure the maturation is something you can really see, and probably more so than a normal year, because I'll be the old guy, because in this relationship I am the old guy. If I'm coaching you and you're not competing, I can watch the other side of you. I can watch the mental side of you, and I'm not worried about you being able to get out in 30 seconds or being able to ride for 30 seconds, which is a lot of coaches has to be their primary focus. You can look at these other things. Joe Dubuque's a good buddy of mine. I love Sean Gray. I've had Reese on the show. You guys have a super eclectic set of personalities there. And all of them speak glowingly, including yourself. I've talked to you off the air about Chris Ayers. And to me, Chris Ayers is a really interesting guy because, no disrespect, but he wasn't a 4-time national champion, world champion. Yeah. But it shows that there's more than one path to become a great coach and a great leader. I think most of us are the kind of guys that when we get around people that are really good, we try to steal from them a little bit. Like, hey, you're really good at this. We do it in wrestling all the time, but I think as you get older, you steal in life. So what are some of the things maybe that you've watched in Chris Ayers and have been able to steal from him or are trying to?
Ayers is all in, so even his wrestling style, like if you watched him in his Lehigh days, he was doing Polishes and he was throwing the kitchen sink at guys. And he's just like that as a coach. Like he's going to exhaust every option without fear. If it means that, he's going to get the most out of a situation, get the most out of a guy, get the most out of a coach, So for me, he's been a guy who I've really just leaned on and I've watched a lot of because he's so organized. He's really structured. And it's not, some people are organized for the point of being organized because they think they should be organized. This dude really just wants to win,
Yeah,
I think
there's a purpose.
He wants to win. But he really believes in demanding that higher standard out of his guys. And he thinks, he might be crazy, but he thinks that, we can win a national title at Princeton. And he got me bought into that on my recruiting visit to come and join the staff. And, you look at the guys who've been with him, from the Sean Grays to the Joe Dubukes, it's not commonplace for coaches to be in a place as long as they've been, especially coaches as good as they are. They're really good. And I'm sure people have been trying to poach them and, and there's been a lot of opportunities out there. But there's a reason that those guys have been here for, I think, close to 10 years or something like that. And that was something that I looked at and I, kind of evaluated that. And I'm like, man, that's special. You don't see that in not just college wrestling. You don't see that in college athletics, period. It's kind of a revolving door. So for us to be together I've been here, I'm going on 4 years now, which is crazy because time really does fly. But it really speaks of how good Ayers is as a leader. And I think communication is, is really essential to being a great leader. And he's really effective at communicating to people at every level. So not just the coach, not just his training staff, not just, his family, but you see it in all through his life. And that's why we're successful. He's the driving force of that. And it manifests itself with the kids. They look up to him, and they really demand that most out of themselves, because he puts so much into them. If a guy wants to stay after, he'll stay after. If a guy wants to stay after 3 hours, he'll be there actively engaged and pushing the buttons for 3 hours, because that's what kind of coach he is. And it really drives all of us. He's the first one in and the last one out. He's mopping mats, and he's special, man. And yeah, I don't think that you have to be a 4-time national champ to get that. I think the best coaches are like him. It just so happens a lot of them are 4-time national champs and they want to be the best, but he has that same drive. And dude, I think he's, quiet as kept, the best coach in the whole thing right now. So I hope he doesn't go anywhere, because I'm sure people are going to be throwing stuff at him as well.
Well, you said all of it's interesting, but a couple of things I pulled out is I think almost all leaders have to have some level of organization, or they have to have a right hand that will do all that for them. Because if any organization, we're going to talk about your other organization, down the line here, but you have to have purpose, you have to have quantitative goals. And, the other, speaking of goals, when Chris says, I believe we can win a national title, here's what I know for sure. If he doesn't think you can do it, y'all ain't going to do it. So he has to believe it for it to even be an option. It doesn't mean it's not more difficult there when you can only recruit 10% of the kids because of academics, and then if those kids, now there's no scholarships per se. I mean, the deck is stacked, but if you don't believe it, you can't do it. It's the same thing as winning a state title, same thing as winning a national title. If you don't think you can do it, you can just turn your chips in. You ain't going to get there. Yeah, it's a wrap, right? So for sure on that. So, and the last thing I'll say about it is I've known Dubuque forever. Since I was recruiting, I sent Chalfont to him at when he was
Adam, dude. I wrestled with Adam for a year.
Yeah. So he was at a JUCO that we had wrestled against, and I called Joe. I'm like, this dude can wrestle, and there it goes. But it seems to me like Chris is really good at letting you guys be yourselves. And I think that's another important part of leadership, where you guys, because a lot of programs, they all came through like University of Iowa was all Iowa guys, Oklahoma State, all Oklahoma State guys. I don't think there's a right or wrong. I mean, clearly staffs are doing it different ways, but you guys have a very unique, like I said, eclectic set of personalities. I think it's awesome that you guys all seem genuinely happy and are thriving and are learning, but not being forced to sort of conform to something that you're not.
Yeah, I think it comes down to trust, So Ayers hires and brings people on that he trusts. He thinks, or he wants to trust. He has that feeling that, some synergy is there, and it works. Because he actually, I think it starts with him saying, hey, I value your input. I don't want you to be a yes man. That's something that we talk about. We argue as a staff every day in the office about decisions that we make.
Sure.
And I don't think if we didn't do that, like, we would not get to the best decision. And sometimes we have to, stick a pin in it and come back to it another time. But
right. Yeah.
That's how things get better. The same way we talk back and forth with our guys about technique. That's how you arrive at that thing that's special. And then, we get on the mat, and then you watch us compete for each other, and in the corner, I think it's a pretty animated group. That's the first thing I noticed. My first year, I was like, yo, what the heck is going on here? And by maybe a couple months later, I was doing the same thing as everybody else, And we're all different, like each guy I have in the corner, I have some guys with Sean Gray, some guys with Joe Dubuque, some guys with Chris Ayers, and that relationship is different for each match, depending on what that kid needs. And that's something that we learn together, and it's been really cool too to be, obviously coaching is a little bit different than competing, but it's a different type of battle. I'm just as exhausted after coaching all day as I am from wrestling all day, so it's cool.
you're getting good at this because that is the perfect segue to where I was going to go next. Is you wrestling all day? You've been wrestling as much as anybody. I was trying to look up all the results, but I know off the top of my head, you wrestle Win Mahalik, you wrestle Jaden Cox, you wrestle Mark Hall. I know you got a match scheduled with Kyle Snyder. Who all, first of all, just so I don't miss anybody, who all have you wrestled like in the last 6-8 months besides those guys?
I wrestled Drew Foster. I wrestled Brett Farr. Wrestled Sam Brooks a couple times. Miles Martin. I wrestled a Miles Amin. I wrestled Gabe Dean. I'll be wrestling him next month as well. I feel like I've wrestled a lot of people. You know,
We've gotten
it's
like
been
somewhere
great.
between 8 and 12.
I wrestled
matches.
a couple old guys. What's his name? Keith Gavin. I wrestled, which is pretty cool.
He's good, man. You can't call him too like that dude.
No, he's old. He's old, but he's really good. No, it was cool because I used to watch him a lot and, you know, not scared of it or anything, but I used to look up like, oh man, I'm wrestling Keith Gavin. This is pretty cool. I've watched him put people on their head my whole life, but you know.
So what's interesting about that is everybody has their own methodology. One of the things that I've talked about is, to me, wrestling's like a funnel. When you're a little kid, they'll put you in 200 matches a year, right? And then you get to high school, and there's 40 or 50, and then you can wrestle another 40 or 50 in the off season. Then you get to college, and it's getting smaller, and they want you to do very little matches in the off season. You know, you'll see these guys just disappear for 8 months. They get better, obviously, but they're working. And then you get to the international scene or the national scene, and it's hard to get 15 matches in a year, right?
For sure.
And, you know, I had Sergey Beloglazov on last week, and he talked about how, you know, in Russia that they teach more about skill and technique and how to land and all these other things early on, and less about wrestling 200 matches, and clearly trying to get rid of some of the helicopter mom and dads early and focusing on these other things. But
Sure.
You've gone, like, I coach junior college, and just to be fair, when you coach junior college, you want to wrestle as many D1 schools, D2 schools, 4-year schools as you can, because it's the best way for your kids to get recruited. You know, like if you're coaching at Indiana and my guy beats your starter, you're going to be over in the corner while they're shaking hands like, who the hell is that guy?
Right.
Let's get a meet, right? But it's different. Our goal is different. We don't care if we lose in the regular season because it's a formula. It's like the state tournament. You just got to get through and get in the draw and you wrestle good. And we always felt like losing to guys, you learn the most watching film that way. It feels like you've taken that approach, not obviously an intent to lose, but to wrestle as many good guys as you can without big training cycles. Just kind of, I mean, I remember you wrestled Mahalik, and then you and Jaden got on the mic and worked out a match like 4 days later at the Burroughs-Taylor match, I think, if I got it right. So first, just tell me about the mindset of what was the idea behind just getting as many scraps in as you can.
I think a lot goes into it. So obviously, I do believe that I'm a pretty good wrestler. If I didn't think I was very good, I would not be calling people out and trying to. I don't want to go anywhere and get my ass kicked. Like I
Sure.
love wrestling, but that is not that's not fun.
Right.
So I really do believe in myself a lot. But it comes down to something a little bit bigger than that. You know, I am prepared to do another Olympic cycle. I see my trajectory. Like I think I'm making jumps just as fast as anybody else in the world right now. I feel really good against world competition when I wrestle really top-ranked guys around the world. I feel like I'm there, but we have some really good guys domestically. So what does that mean, Nate? That means that you got to get better, right? And how do you do that if you're? I don't think, you know, all due respect to my guys that I have in my room, but there's so many different feels. We get used to each other in our room, and then certain things don't work. I want to be challenged. Not only competitively, but creatively, you know, so I want to be able to be a little bit more creative and to be more open. And then also I just started freestyle 3 years ago. You know, I've been wrestling freestyle since I got here. And there's a lot that I still need to learn and get a lot better at. And what better way to do it than do it in match situations? Some guys have wrestled their whole life. You talk about being a kid and wrestling 200 matches. You know, they wrestle freestyle when I was in the same room and these guys were wrestling freestyle and they're like, where are you at in the summer? And I'm like doing baseball and whatever,
Sure.
And then taking breaks because that's what I needed at the time.
Right.
But for now, you know, if I'm all in on this thing and I really actually enjoy it and I love competing, I think getting the most experience as I possibly can getting the most mental edges I can get, being in situations over and over again. So I have a lot of practice at certain specific situations, coming back from a point with 10 seconds left, whatever the situation may be, defending my legs for 30 seconds when this guy is going into his sprint. It's all going to serve me well. Like, what am I protecting? So like, if I don't do it, it doesn't do anything for me. I can have a horrible record. Luckily, I've won most of the times.
Yeah.
But if my record was bad, I wouldn't approach it any other way. If I feel like competitively I'm right there and I'm looking for this jump, this edge here, the only way I think I'm going to get that is through competing. And honestly, I've gotten really comfortable in the match situations from wrestling under the lights. So I'm really excited, and I think it's going to scare. It's kind of scary for some of these top guys. Like, they know that I'm a problem, and they don't really want to wrestle me. I've called out a lot of guys. I've been close to wrestling a lot of guys, and they've fallen through. So, like, yeah, I've wrestled a lot of people, but I could have wrestled a lot more and a lot of bigger names, So I notice it, and I'll use that as a chip for as long as I can. But in the meantime, I'm working on myself, and it's all to get to that goal of being an Olympic champ. We're all going to be at trials. So if I lost to this guy 4 times and I beat him at trials, it doesn't really matter, does it?
And vice versa, right? If you beat somebody and they beat you at trials, it's that day.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So you got it, man.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like, you used a phrase, which I was going to say, you don't wrestle like you're protecting anything. And like, I've done a lot of matchmaking for wrestling. I've done matchmaking for MMA. And it's always like the one person always wants to fight or wrestle the person ranked above them. And I said to the guy, I'm like, you understand, no one would ever fight if that was the case, because the guy above you doesn't, if you're ranked above me, you're like, well, I don't want to wrestle him. He's below me. Like, somebody at some point has to compromise and go, okay, that's a good match or a good fight. And that makes sense. Right. To me, I think, it's a universal thing. You learn way more from your losses than your wins. You take them harder. You study the tape harder. You're more critical. It's how you improve. Your coach can kind of, if you weren't humble, you can be humble, all those sort of things. And the only way to lose is to compete. And it's sort of a double-edged sword for the good. You either lose and you improve, or you don't lose and you're actually winning. And that's another part of it too. You've wrestled so many of the guys, and that's a weight that's really interesting. Penn State's got 2 guys in their room that, are really good. And, potentially if they wrestled each other in the quarters, semis, or finals, would be interesting to see who sits in which corner. Then you've got all these other guys, but there's only a number 1 seed in that bracket. There's nobody sitting like JB and Dake sitting, or Kyle and Jaden sitting. So it really feels like who can just put probably 4 matches together, then get to the finals, regroup, and win that 2 out of 3. When you look at that, it feels like you've done as much prep as anybody in terms of wrestling those matches, the RTC Cup. You mentioned a lot of names. A lot of those guys are obviously NCAA champions. Amin, having Amin in this country that's an Olympian already is a really cool opportunity for all of you guys to get to wrestle. And you're one of the guys to beat Bo Nickel in college. So, the whole process and the thought of this has got to be exciting for you. And we're recording this on February 15th. So really like 6-7 weeks away.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And I've always been a guy who, and my mother hates this, but I've always been a guy who just flies by the seat of my pants, like I have been getting a lot more organized under the guise of Chris Ayers, just because he's there and he's the best. But I've always I didn't plan on being an Olympic champ when I first started wrestling as a kid. I wanted to win, states. And then after that, I wanted to win the next best thing. And in high school, I wanted to be a high school state champ. And then I wanted to wrestle in college. And then in college, I wanted to be an All-American. Then I wanted to be a national champ. And it goes on, and and now I actually see that goal. I want to be an Olympic champ. I want to be a world champ. And I see it as something that's attainable. Last year, right around this time, I got teched twice by Sam Brooks, and I wrestled Sam Brooks this year, and I teched him twice, one of the 2 times we wrestled him. And it wasn't like I got lucky. It was like I beat him up twice. And that's because of improvement. Last year, I wrestled Brett Favre 5-4, 4-4. I won both, but they were really close. This year I wrestled him quick. Like those things make me excited. And I'm able to give myself my flowers while I'm still competing and say, man, Nate, you're doing a great job, and pat myself on the back, without stopping my momentum, because that's how I'm wired. And everybody's different. Some guys, when they're about to go compete, they're going to shut off social media for a week and all this stuff and not answer the phone, not text. David, me and you know each other, like, yo, if I got a match and I'm wrestling in 30 minutes and you send me a text message, I might reply to the text message and, hey, I'm going to give you a call later. That's just how I am. And I recognize that about me. And so I don't have to do the theatrics and the ways that people kind of just do it just to do it. Yeah. And it's been cool. I think a cool part of it is I've been getting paid, so I've been able to market myself and enter that space with networking and different things. So that's been fun and creative. And I think that unfortunately, it took a pandemic for wrestling to wake up,
learn that. Yeah.
And learn, but this could be a new normal. So if I'm one of those people that push it into that, I want to do that too. We're going to get into organization and whatnot later, but I'm all about growing the sport of wrestling. Anything that will create more opportunities for these men and women. Like, we're the best, we're the best. We should be at the center of attention. We shouldn't have to take the backseat to any other sport. Wrestling is the oldest sport ever, and the reason it's so what's the word? It's so primal, like it's a thing that, my cats, if my cats were in here, they'd be wrestling. If my dogs were in here, they'd be like, that's just what we do. We're going to be wrestling with everybody at some point in their life is wrestling with their sibling or cousin or whatever. Yeah. And it's just because that's what it is. So why can't we market this thing in a way that the whole world sees it, the whole world appreciates it, and we can all benefit from it? So, yeah. And, I think seeing our senior level athletes more often is a good thing. It's crazy that we only wrestle, the top guys wrestle 3 times a year, and then other guys wrestle 10 times a year. Like, it makes no sense. If we are the best of the best, if we, and I think across the board, you take a national champ, obviously NCAA does a great job building up their event. You take a national champ and you drop him into one of these tournaments that our senior level guys are wrestling at, the seasoned vet is going to win most of the time. The guy who is a senior level athlete who's has experience on the international scene, who's traveled, who's been focused on freestyle, like, those guys are going to win. And that's okay. But the world kind of builds up NCAA wrestling. And I love NCAA wrestling. I coach NCAA wrestling.
Sure.
But the best guys deserve that attention as well. So how can we get that attention to the best guys so we can get them paid and then continue to build this thing up?
Yeah. Well, and I want to make sure we talk a little bit about BWA, but I'll just comment real quick on what you said. I think it's the structure, right? Like, right now, like, all these matches that happened in the pandemic, one of the things that, like, the talking head nerds like me are like, was that match going to count towards seeding? Because, they had a 2 kilo allowance and it was the night before, or it was a 1 kilo allowance in the day of. And which of those things count towards seeding? And where with the NCAA, your kids don't pick who they wrestle. Princeton gives them a schedule and says, here's who we're wrestling. And, like, I'll pick Patrick Glory because, he's probably the most well-known kid on your team right now. Like, hey, this year you get to wrestle Spencer Lee. Next year we don't do Iowa, you're not going to, but you get to wrestle Brian Courtney, you get to wrestle Drew Hildebrand, you get to wrestle Rayvon Foley, or you get to wrestle whoever you guys see in your schedule. You're going to wrestle Vito Arujau. You guys are in the same conference. Yeah. But because they don't put that schedule together, and most coaches don't pull their guys, they don't duck them for seedings, because most coaches, look, we want to get a good seed, but we want our guy to be the best possible. Every coach thinks they're better than the other coach, so they think if they both have film that they're going to do better, breaking that film down. Where here, protecting seeds and matchups are important, and you can control it. Like the Sammy Brooks example, I don't know which of those matches were at scratch, and I don't know which of them are going to count, but if the seeding had happened after you'd been teched twice, you'd be behind him and you'd be handcuffed to anybody that had beaten him. You'd be behind them probably because of that. Now that's switched. So I think until they can come up with more events and things like that, and there's no easy solution. And I mean, and I do these podcasts for USA Wrestling, who I think we all love USA Wrestling or what they do, but I don't want to be the guy that goes, here's a problem, but I have no idea how to fix it. But I guess that's what I'm saying. Like there has to be a solution to get more of these matches in. So
Move faster, USA Wrestling. Come out with stuff quicker. Come on. I'll say it.
The last thing that I want to talk to you about is Black Wrestling Association. So, and it's an interesting segue because I think part of your improvement in wrestling, I'm guessing you're doing this, and if not, as an old guy, I would suggest you do this. You've got a lot of really smart guys that have wrestled and gone through and accomplished the goal that you have. You know, you can reach out to a Kenny Monday, a Kevin Jackson, you know, a Jordan Burroughs, and there's, you know, a Kerry McCoy, all these guys that have won world and Olympic medals and won titles. But I know BWA is not about you getting better as a wrestler. And that's just a sort of a side benefit I see from it, that you literally, you're on these guys' Rolodex now, or, you know, cell phone list, and you can talk to them. But, you know, for people that don't know, kind of give me the Reader's Digest version of BWA and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so Black Wrestling Association was created to inspire, connect, and empower Black wrestlers and allies to grow wrestling through representation, equality, and opportunity. So we've been doing this, we've been at it since May, following the George Floyd murder. We got together, first individual basis, and then with about 60 different people that we just knew. And we just had a nice little talk. We had some breakout rooms, and we had a good conversation, and we felt better. But at the end of that conversation, we realized that we're just talking, and it's a sounding board, and we're not doing anything to actually change the circumstances that surround the issue. The issue is, you know, we're all successful for the most part. We all, you know, have been successful in our lives, but we look at our kids and we say, there are things in this world that I have to now teach my kids that I shouldn't have to teach my kids. I shouldn't have to tell them to be fearful for this situation, or this situation will work out, or there are people out here who do things like this and that. And we can run around circles forever asking people to care about certain things, or we can actually do some work to create things that actually enable that change to start to develop. So from the time we got established in June of 2020, and the biggest thing was figuring out how we wanted to operate. So getting our organizational structure in place, you know, appointing different people into different positions, and then, you know, being flexible enough to bring in some outsiders, some quote unquote outsiders, you know, non-wrestling folk, David Mirkatani, you know, people who have expertise in different areas to help us carry out our mission. And, you know, from the time we've gotten together, it's been fun. It's been great to be connected to so many people who are in such a prominent position, in not even including myself. Like I'm good at wrestling, but, you know, having Jordan Burroughs and Kerry McCoy and Kenny Monday and Kevin Jackson, and James Green and Jaden Cox, and, you know, Gabriel Townsend, BJ Futrell, Mark Hall, like having those guys kind of leading the ship and creating something with them has been really special. And it's only been getting better from there. You know, our board is diverse now, because before it was super Black male freestyle wrestlers. And we wanted to create a precedent that we want to be an example to not just our organization, but any other organization that's going to be created. Like we wanted to actually act as an inspiration for Black lawyers who have nothing to do with wrestling to say, you know what, we need to do something, and we're going to create a Black Lawyer Association to correct or actually look for solutions to XYZ, or the business leaders to say, hey, we're going to create an organization and look for the solutions to XYZ. With having that Black voice at the lead has been really important to us, because it takes away that, you know, that I think it's really a bad thing to say, but that excuse that, oh, they're just looking for a handout, they're looking for something given, and not willing to put in the work. Well, we're willing to put in the work within wrestling, and I think that once we start doing some of the work, it'll actually improve wrestling for everyone. When, what is it? During a tide, you know, like, or what is it? What is it? All
Yeah.
ships are going to rise.
Yeah.
You know?
Rising tide. Yeah. Raises all ships. Exactly.
Rising
Yeah.
tide raises all ships. So
Yeah.
that's something that we want to do within wrestling. I think that wrestling means well. Wrestling has a great reputation. Anybody who knows of wrestlers, they say they're hard workers. They say they, you know, they're thankless guys, you know, men and women, and they're diligent, and they actually become really successful. So if we can actually start to infiltrate that and put those attributes to underserved communities, I think that's going to be huge. Not only to the individuals that are affected by wrestling, but as actually a reflection on what we can create throughout the general population. So it's been fun. It's been a lot of hiccups with anything. You know, obviously, I went to school as a sports broadcasting major, and everybody has the different backgrounds. This is a passion project, and from its inspiration, we've been, you know, making some headway, and we have really big things coming. So I'm excited. If you want to, you know, follow us on social media, we do Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We're actually on LinkedIn as well. It's BW Association, or at BW Association. And we have a website, blackwrestlingassociation.org. So yeah, I think if you want to get more information, I would visit those things. But we have already been doing some pretty cool things for Black History Month.
Yeah.
I didn't publicize these things for whatever purposes, but we started these legacy clinics. So James Green actually gave a free clinic last Thursday in New Jersey. Mark Hall is going to be giving a free clinic this Thursday in New Jersey, and BJ Futrell will do it for that last Thursday of Black History Month. And you know, we got some guys there to make a little story around it, and it'll be kind of cool. I picked up a phone. We got some sponsors for that,
Nice.
so it's pretty cool. Just taking care of travel and whatnot for the guys, but a free clinic where we targeted Trenton, Newark, and Elizabeth, 3 predominantly Black areas and clubs. And we're able to get a good sized population where it wasn't a huge clinic. It was pretty small, obviously respecting the virus. And we have protocols set in place, and
Sure. Doing everything safe,
so,
but still doing it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So it's some big things coming out pretty soon. David's going to have his hands busy. And, you know, I'm excited to, you know, get to actually do some physical things. And I think as the country starts to open back up, and as the vaccines get to each household, I think it'll be easier to be more of a presence in the wrestling community and be more of a physical presence in the world. So I think it's pretty cool.
Well, my father's full Japanese, and so I'm obviously mixed. And I grew up, certainly not the same journey that any African American has, but grew up with a lot of racist stuff as a kid. And one of the things that I found is sports are one of the best places. And for me, it was wrestling. I played soccer, but really wrestling. But, you know, like I remember I recruited a kid one year, and he came in from Georgia with his mom and dad. And, you know, you kind of do the closing meeting on Sunday on the way out. And he said, well, how many Black kids do you have on the team, coach? And I go, I don't know. And then he's like, see, you know, like this is a problem. And I go, I don't know. That's not how I count kids. I count how many 125 pounders I have all the way up to 285 pounders, and how many kids I think can actually score points at the national tournament. But if you want, I'll sit down and I'll think about it and I'll count. And the mom said, no, that's good enough. Where do we assign, you know? But I think everybody, you know, everybody's on the whole different political spectrum, and it's not for us to decide where anybody else should be. But what I love about sports are it brings people together. It's a united goal. Like I probably wouldn't know you if it wasn't for wrestling. You know, you probably wouldn't be friends with, you know, with Reese and Joe and Chris and Sean, and, you know, probably the vast majority of the people of your life if it wasn't for wrestling. You know, I mean, and wrestling teaches so many great life lessons, you know, regardless of whether you're tall or short or young or old or, you know, skinny or fat and you got skinny, you know, all that stuff. So I think it's cool what you guys are doing. And I think those lessons, just like when women's wrestling became prominent, the lessons people learn from wrestling should not just be for one race or gender. They should be available for everyone. And wrestling is a vehicle to improve everyone's life, to break the the chain or break the cycle of maybe no one's gone to college, no one's bought a home. Well, you can use this to get a scholarship, and you can get a scholarship, you can get a degree, you get a degree, you get a job, you get a job, you get money, you get money. Now you can pay yourself every month instead of paying rent, those kind of things.
Sure.
And so I think what you guys are doing is admirable. And I, you know, obviously you guys got a star-studded board, and I'm lucky enough to know a lot of those people just, you know, because you always give me trouble about how old I am, but I know a lot of those guys. And, but they all have probably as big a hearts as they did, you know, great wrestling careers. So we got about 2 minutes left before we sign off. You're wrestling Snyder here in like a week and a half, is that right?
Yes, I'm wrestling Kyle Snyder.
And then do you go to the Rome tournament, or what's next for you after the Snyder match?
Not going overseas. So we're gonna host NJRTC's first event in March,
nice.
First week in March, and I'll be wrestling Gabe Dean there. So our rubber match from the 1-1 fiasco, that was super exciting. Everybody should go watch that 1-1 loss. That was great.
A couple bricks and push outs, and shot clock points, and yeah. Well, sometimes them two guys, it's like watching MMA. It's like two wrestlers and they end up standing on their feet, and it's a bad boxing fight. So sometimes that happens. Well, look, man, I've had a chance to become friends with you over the last year or so. I appreciate you coming on the show, and I respect what you're doing, both in wrestling, but just as importantly, with your other activities. I want to wish you the best of luck as you go forward here, not only with BWA, but also chasing the Olympic dream here. And it'll be fun to watch you do it, man. So best of luck.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's been cool. It's been a lot of support as well. So yourself and others. So I'm excited to keep it rolling.
No doubt. So the podcast was made possible through a partnership with USA Wrestling, the national governing body for the sport of wrestling in the United States, and sponsored by Nike Wrestling. Visit athleteps.com for all your Nike Wrestling and USA Wrestling branded wrestling gear. Thank you guys, as always, so much for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you all next week.